What's up, metal and heavy music fans? These are my picks for the best death metal albums of 2021. Y'all, it's been a really great year for death metal for all kinds of both mainstream and underground releases, but let's start from the bottom with my personal favorites in Inferi with Vile Genesis via the Artisan era. Now, I've seen some split responses to this album in my own audience, but when it comes down to it, I had a hard time putting it down, and it continues to linger with me to this day. What on the surface is arguably another melodically inclined technical death metal album ends up also being incredibly fun and increasingly so with each subsequent listen. Mesmeric Horror in particular may be one of their best songs to date despite an already impressive discography, but there are plenty of other gems like Maelstrom Prison, From Exile to Exaltation, and Carving Thine Kingdom to enjoy as well. On a similar note, we have Summoning the Lich with United in Chaos via Metal Blade Records. I'm a big fan of the Black Dahlia murder going back to the early days of Unhallowed, and while many bands have attempted to achieve these same levels of fun, camp, and overall tight songwriting, few succeed. Enter Summoning the Lich, who have grabbed the formula by the balls and dropped an album that would easily fit in the upper tiers of that same discography. This entire album is absolute melodic death metal bliss with its already seemingly endless hooks complemented by fantastical role-playing imagery.
Alizé does not exist in this world.
Kanye the Giant slaps that bitch.
Oh!
And I'll say it one more time, if you're looking to just dip your toes in with this one, check out the track Descend. It will be stuck in your head for weeks. Then we've got Pest with Dark Arms Reach Skyward with Bone White Fingers. I previously included this album in my best deathcore albums list back in August, but the more I thought about it, the less I was satisfied with using that label. There are certainly elements of deathcore here, even going so far to have a guest appearance from Vulvoldania's Duncan Bentley, but at the end of the day, I'd place Pest much closer to the likes of Dying Fetus than Suicide Silence. Furthermore, this is an album that is as impressively diverse as it is brutal, especially for a solo project. April is just as likely to pull in elements of mathcore, grindcore, and more melodic and progressive influences as the general foundation of tech death, which ends up making it all the more engaging. And while the production is a bit raw, I argue that this quality only adds to its charm and visceral impact.
Give it to us raw and wriggling.
Next up is Hans Grossmann with To Where the Light Retreats. Getting more overtly progressive here, you may or may not recognize Grossmann from not only his other solo work, but also contributions to other highly lauded projects such as Obscura, The Faceless, Alkaloid, and Triptychon. And while he's known perhaps best for his prolific drumming, each of his own albums have really showcased impressive skills on all instruments as well as a knack for complex songwriting. But arguably, Where the Light Retreats may be Grossmann's most accessible work to date, infusing a strong focus on 2000s Swedish melodic death metal vibes into his usual progressive and technical wankery, perfectly walking the line between the aforementioned complexity and simple earworm catchiness, as with those anthemic soaring harmonies on Sun Eaters. A great album for fans of The Faceless and early In Flames alike. One more notch up from here, we have Deviant Process with Nurture via Season of Mist. Now, if you really wanted to double down on the technical and progressive elements alike, even into the more challenging realms of gore guts and artificial brain, this is the album for you. Deviant Process are still largely complete unknowns at this point, but I promise you that they deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as those bands in their uncanny ability to harness absolute violent chaos into something that is strangely digestible. Time and time again on this album, what could derail into utter dissonance and the churning of broken machinery comes together in a brilliant display of group cohesion from all band members. If you want another prime example to start with, I strongly recommend Homo Homini Deus, which for all of its madness is also supremely memorable. Back to the big leagues with At the Gates and The Nightmare of Being via Century Media Records. Whew, this is a divisive album this year, with people either seeming to love it or hate it, but personally, after being completely unimpressed with the watered-down rehashing of ideas on the last two albums, I was ready for a change. And oh man, is this a grand departure if nothing else. I'm not sure I would have ever imagined the idea of At the Gates Goes Prog, but that's more or less the best way to look at this album. And if you ask me, the result is far more textured, engaging, and interesting than anything they've put out in years. In fact, get your pitchforks out, because I might even go so far as to name this as number 2 in their discography, just under Slaughter of the Soul.
Doesn't this guy deserve a fair trial?
You, back of the mob!
Back of the mob? What? This is my spot, I came early!
Back to more modern acts, we have Archspire with Bleed the Future via Season of Mist. Now, if you asked me for the most fun album of the year on just sheer enjoyability and re-listenability alone, this could be it. I've had a great time with plenty of albums in 2021, but few actually put a physical smile on my face throughout the entire duration, and I've had multiple reviewer friends state the same thing. From the perfect blend of groove and technicality to Ali's machine gun vocal acrobatics, it's an absolute blast. And fortunately, it also checks all of the other boxes beyond the fun factor in terms of obviously proficient performances and also being an entirely unique listen when compared to other tech albums this year. Some may still turn their nose up at this band for various reasons, but hey, it's just more party for the rest of us.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out, 'cause I don't want ass prints on my new door.
Then going deep underground again, we've got Blindfolded and Led to the Woods with Nightmare Withdrawals. So back to the more dissonant side of things, I'm not sure any mere words can prepare you for this album. Simply put, it's an extinction level event that sounds like every possible natural disaster happening at the same time. Fire tornado to your left, tsunami to your right, earth quaking beneath you. Guess I'll die. We're basically talking more artificial brain-esque death metal, but with some of the mathcore sensibilities of groups like Ion Dissonance and a touch of fellow New Zealanders Ulcerate. And if that still wasn't enough to get you interested, there's also a guest appearance from Niles Carl Sanders on Atop the Wings of a Magpie. Bring pads and a helmet. Then we have Fractal Universe with the Impassable Horizon via Metal Blade Records. Step between my frostbitten dreams. If you're like me, you miss death metal era Opeth, but fortunately this new album from Fractal Universe scratches that same itch and then some. Tracks like A Clockwork Expectation nail both the soft, more traditional prog elements and the explosions of aggression perfectly, while also adding their own unique signature along the way. It's all of those years of Ackerfeld's carefully calculated and dynamic songwriting colliding with the more modern and technically dense take on the genre of Obscura and First Fragment. That's not even to mention the utterly entrancing vocals and sudden explosions of saxophone. The Impassable Horizon is not only one of the best albums of the year, it's also one of its biggest surprises. And then we have the big boys, Carcass, with Torn Arteries via Nuclear Blast Records. Another legacy act with an album that seemed to divide the fan base, but for similar reasons I shared with At the Gates, I love what Carcass have accomplished here. As much as I enjoyed Surgical Steel, Torn Arteries is a far more ambitious album that combines all of the best elements of the band's various eras over the years. Please explain, for what was it worth? You get incredible moments of the melodic death metal of Heartwork and Surgical Steel, the more progressive elements of Symphonies of Sickness, and even what feels like a more successful version of the death and droll of Swan Song. All of this largely driven by Bill Steer's guitar work, which is as impressive as ever. I didn't have super high expectations for this one going in, but it absolutely blew me away. Y'all check out this playlist for even more death metal videos from 2021, and let me know your favorite death metal albums in the comments. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.